Imagine you are walking into a high-stakes exam. Maybe you're sitting down for the TEAS or, the HESI nursing entrance exams, and the clock is ticking and your palms are just a little sweaty.
Oh yeah, the classic test day nerves.
Right. Or maybe you aren't taking a test at all. Maybe you're just sitting in a doctor's office reading your own complicated medical chart, and suddenly you are hit with this massive, intimidating word.
Like cardiomyopathy.
Yes, exactly. Something like cardiomyopathy, your brain just freezes for a second. I mean, it looks like a foreign language. But instead of panicking, what if you possessed a linguistic decoder ring to just break it apart?
That is the dream, isn't it?
It really is. What if that giant wall of letters wasn't an obstacle, but actually a set of instructions telling you exactly what the word means?
Well, I mean, it completely changes your relationship with language. You go from feeling overwhelmed by unfamiliar vocabulary to feeling really equipped to dismantle it.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring prefixes, suffixes, and roots. We want to look at how understanding word morphology acts as the ultimate shortcut to mastering unfamiliar terminology, especially in the medical and scientific fields.
It's such a powerful tool.
But okay, let's unpack this for a second. Are we just talking about memorizing endless dictionary lists again? Because I have some serious flashbacks to middle school flashcards, and I honestly don't think my brain can hold any more arbitrary definitions.
No, not at all. This approach is actually the exact opposite of rote memorization. What we're really talking about is treating morphology, which is just the structure of words, as a generative skill.
A generative skill, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so think about when you first learned phonics as a kid. You didn't memorize the sound of every single word in the English language.
Right, that would be impossible.
Exactly. Instead, you learned the sounds of the letters, the fundamental units of sound. So you could sound out literally anything. We are doing that exact same thing here, but for units of meaning instead of units of sound.
Oh, wow. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So if you are listening to this right now, whether you are prepping for a demanding medical career or you just want to read the morning news more sharply, this is a daily survival skill for you.
It really is a survival skill, yeah.
But to understand this generative skill, we first have to examine the raw materials of language, sort of the blueprint of words.
Right. And the foundational brick of that blueprint is called the morpheme. In linguistics, a morpheme is defined as the smallest unit of language that carries meaning on its own.
So it's smaller than a word.
Yeah, it is smaller than a word, but if you try to divide it any further, it loses its meaning entirely. It just becomes random sounds.
Got it.
And when we look at the multisyllabic vocabulary found in academic English, and especially in science and medicine, those words are built by combining three basic categories of morphemes. You have roots, prefixes, and suffixes.
Okay, so the root is the core. It's like the foundation of the house.
Precisely. The root, which is sometimes called a base or a stem, carries the core meaning of the word. And in English science and medical vocabulary, these roots are overwhelmingly borrowed from Greek and Latin.
Oh, right, because of the history of medicine.
Exactly. So you have roots like cardi for heart, derm for skin, path for disease or feeling, and bio for life. That is your anchor.
And then we have the attachments, prefixes attached to the front of a root, and they typically modify the meaning in some way, right?
Sure.
Like location or number.
Yeah, or negation, degree, or time. So we have hyper for excessive, brady for slow, or anti for against.
Okay, and suffixes attached to the end of the root.
Right. They typically signal a grammatical function, telling you what part of speech it is, like a noun, adjective, or verb. But in medicine, suffixes often signal a very specific procedure or clinical condition.
Like itis for inflammation?
Exactly. See, itis for inflammation, anectomy for surgical removal, or anagonology for the study of something.
I love thinking about this like Lego bricks. You have your big chunky base plate, and that's your root, and then you snap a little piece on the front, your prefix, and a little piece on the back, your suffix, and you've built a totally unique structure.
That is a perfect analogy.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. Linguists distinguish between free morphemes and bound morphemes. Free morphemes are like those standalone Lego figures.
Yeah.
They can exist all by themselves, like the words dog or run.
Right. They don't need anything else to make sense. However, most of the prefixes, suffixes, and combining form roots we are talking about in science are bound morphemes. To use your analogy, they are the specialized connection pieces that have absolutely no structural integrity on their own until they are snapped onto a base plate.
Because you can't just walk around saying cardi by itself.
Right. It requires an attachment. It just sounds weird otherwise. And this distinction matters deeply because clinical exams deliberately test these bound morphemes. They want to see if future clinicians can actually reason through these formulas.
Wait, so if I'm looking at a patient's chart, I might see gastrectomy, gastrostomy, or gastrotomy. They sound practically identical to the untrained ear. How is a nurse supposed to keep those straight under pressure?
Well, you've hit on the exact reason test makers love this topic. It's often called the surgical suffix family trap.
The surgical suffix family trap, that sounds ominous.
It is a little bit. Let's break down those three terms because they all share the root gastri, meaning stomach. But the suffixes describe entirely different procedures on that exact same organ. So the suffixectomy means surgical removal. So a gastrectomy is the removal of part or all of the stomach.
Okay, so a gastrectomy is taking it out completely, but what about gastrostomy?
The suffix ostomy means the creation of a new opening. So a gastrostomy is surgically creating an opening into the stomach like you would do for a feeding tube.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you aren't removing the stomach, you are bypassing the mouth and esophagus to access it directly.
And then there is a barotomy, just an O instead of an O. Gastrotomy.
Right. The suffixotomy simply means cutting into. So gastrotomy is making an incision into the stomach, perhaps to remove a swallowed object without actually removing stomach tissue or creating a permanent opening.
Wow. So conflating those suffixes is literally the difference between removing a patient's stomach, giving them a feeding tube, or just making an incision.
Exactly. It's a massive clinical difference.
That is terrifying, honestly. But it perfectly illustrates why precision with bound morphemes is so critical.
And speaking of function, we also need to quickly distinguish between two types of morphology. We have inflectional and derivational.
Okay, inflectional first.
Yeah, inflectional morphology involves grammatical tweaks, like adding an S for plural, or ed for past tense, or ain or eing. These don't change a word's core category.
So a dog is still a dog, even if there are two dogs.
Exactly. And running is still the act of running.
But derivational morphology uses affixes like ocnus, agration, ostily, re, or dis-s to build entirely new words, often changing the part of speech entirely.
Yes, exactly.
So when we talk about vocabulary unlocking, we are relying on derivational morphology, right? The strategy is to decode how new meanings are derived, not just how grammar is tweaked.
That is the crux of it, yes. Derivational morphology is what allows a reader to encounter an unfamiliar word and deduce its meaning based on the parts used to build it.
But understanding all these Lego connection pieces sounds like it requires learning thousands of tiny little parts. I mean, I always assumed decoding English required memorizing hundreds of these prefixes and suffixes, but the math actually says otherwise, doesn't it?
The math is surprisingly in your favor, which is great news. I mean, the idea of breaking down words isn't new. Classical grammarians like Dionysius Thrax were analyzing word components back in the 2nd century BCE.
Oh, wow, so it's ancient.
It is. But the modern educational approach, teaching students to consciously decompose unfamiliar words as a strategy, that traces back to American reading researchers William Nagy and Richard Anderson in the 1980s.
What made them shift away from just handing kids a dictionary and a list of words to memorize?
Well, they published this really influential research showing that a substantial majority of the unfamiliar, multisyllabic words students encounter in school texts are morphologically complex.
Meaning they're built from recognizable parts.
Yes. They aren't just irreducible whole words you have to memorize one by one. And this changed vocabulary instruction forever, really, because it proved that teaching a few foundational building blocks could unlock thousands of words.
Which brings us to a statistic that completely rewired how I view the English language. In 1989, researchers Thomas White, Joanne Sewell, and Alice Yanagihara analyzed how often specific prefixes appear across school reading materials.
Yeah, this study is legendary.
Right. And they found that just 4 prefixes account for over half of all prefixed words in typical texts.
Just 4. It's wild. Un, re, in, which also shows up as im, ir, or ill, due to spelling adaptations, and dis.
Just re, in, and dis.
Yeah. Over half the prefix words you encounter come down to those 4.
So if you are studying for your TEAS exam right now, honestly, stop trying to memorize the whole dictionary. Focus your energy on these 4 specific prefixes. You just need to deeply internalize 4 to cover over half your bases.
It is an incredible return on investment. And if you expand that list to just 9 common prefixes, you account for roughly 3/4 of all prefix words in academic text.
Wow.
It proves that language in these contexts operates like predictable mathematical formulas. We can actually do this live with you right now to show how the mechanism works. Let's take the medical term hepatomegaly.
Okay, let's decode it. So if we break hepatomegaly into pieces, hepato means liver, And the suffix megaly means enlargement, so liver plus enlargement.
Yeah.
An enlarged liver.
Perfect. Well, let's take osteoporosis.
Okay, osteo means bone. Poro means pore or passage. And avnosis means an abnormal condition. So an abnormal condition of porous, weakened bone.
See, a test taker who has never seen those exact words before can correctly infer their clinical definitions purely from the parts. They aren't arbitrary strings of letters. They are logical constructions designed to tell you what they mean.
But here's my question. If language is just this set of predictable mathematical formulas, why doesn't word part reasoning work 100% of the time? Because language is ultimately created by humans, and humans are notoriously messy.
We are so messy. We make mistakes, we change our minds, and we honestly forget our own history. Word part instruction has some genuinely surprising failure modes, and the first big trap is what linguists call the rebracketing problem, or meta-analysis.
I love this concept. Explain how we mentally slice words up incorrectly.
Okay, so rebracketing happens when a word gets mentally divided by society along lines that just do not match its true history.
And we all just sort of agree on it.
Yeah, and that new wrong division becomes so popular that it starts creating new words. The classic example of this is hamburger.
Oh, because hamburger actually comes from the German city, Hamburg, plus the suffix. Like someone from Hamburg or food from Hamburg. It originally had absolutely nothing to do with ham, the meat.
Exactly. English speakers looked at the word, saw ham, and mentally rebracketed it as ham plus burger. That division is etymologically false.
Well, we just ran with it.
We did. That false analysis was so incredibly useful to our brains that it spawned an entire family of new words. A totally made-up root morpheme, Aveburger, was born from a historical mistake.
Which gave us cheeseburger, veggie burger, turkey burger.
Yep. And the exact same psychological error happened with the word helicopter.
See, I always thought it was heli plus copter.
Most people do.
Yeah.
But it's actually built from the Greek helic, meaning spiral, plus pteron, meaning wing, spiral wing.
So it's not heli and copter.
No. But because society made that mistaken split, English gained words like helipad and heli skiing.
So a totally wrong way of breaking down a word can actually become the linguistically productive way going forward. We just collectively agree on a mistake and just go with it. But then there's the folk etymology spelling trap, where a mistake actually changes how a word is spelled forever.
Oh, this one is fascinating. Look at the word island. In Old English, it was spelled island, I-L-A-N-D. No S at all.
Wait, really? No S?
None. But because island sounded like the unrelated French and Latin-derived word isle, which comes from insula, writers in the 1500s just inserted a silent S into island.
Why would they do that?
They wanted to make the spelling match a root that it was never actually built from. They just assumed it was connected.
That is wild. The S in island is just a 500-year-old etymological mistake that we are all still forced to memorize for spelling tests today.
Yep, pretty much.
But what about when a word's meaning just completely walks away from its structural roots, semantic drift?
Oh, semantic drift, yeah, meaning frequently outrun structure over centuries. Words just sort of drift away from their original parts.
Take the word nice, for example. It comes from the Latin natus, which is ne, meaning not, and sere, meaning to know. So nice literally meant ignorant.
It did. It meant the exact opposite of its modern meaning.
And understand has no obvious link to being under something and standing.
Right.
And outrage has nothing to do with being out or having rage. I read that it comes from the Old French outré, meaning beyond, plus a suffix. It's about excess, not anger. The fact that it looks like rage is just a total coincidence.
A complete coincidence, yeah.
So doesn't semantic drift completely undermine the strategy of decoding words? I mean, why learn the parts if the whole word is just going to drift away anyway?
That is a really fair point, and it's a crucial distinction we have to make. It depends entirely on the age of the word. Critics will point to cases like nice and outrage as evidence that blind morphological guessing can mislead you.
Which it clearly can.
It can, and they are completely justified if you are looking at common, older, heavily drifted everyday words. But morphology is incredibly reliable for modern scientific and medical coinages.
Oh, because those Greek and Latin scientific terms were deliberately built compositionally in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries.
Exactly. Scientists wanted a universal, politically neutral, highly structured naming system.
They were engineered to be transparent across international borders.
Yes. So while decoding gives you a very strong hypothesis for an academic text, it's not a magical guarantee for every single conversational word in the English language.
That makes total sense. But roots and suffixes aren't the only way words evolve in the wild, right? Sometimes entirely whole words just crash into each other. Because language contains both reliable modern formulas and messy historical mistakes, we really have to look at the broader ecosystem of how words are formed today.
Yeah, and exams like the HESI and TEAS sometimes actually test the vocabulary of vocabulary itself. So you need to distinguish morphological analysis from other ways words are built.
Let's start with compounding.
Okay, compounding is joining two independently existing free words. Both pieces can stand alone, unlike roots and affixes.
Like bookshelf or sunlight. Two distinct concepts mashed together to make a literal third concept.
Exactly. Then there is blending, which is merging parts of two words into one. Think of smog, which is smoke plus fog.
Or a more modern example, infodemic. Information plus epidemic.
Right. Psychology of blending is fascinating. We needed a word to describe the overwhelming flood of information during a public health crisis, so we just welded two existing anxieties together. But that is structurally different from attaching a standardized prefix or suffix.
Got it. And what about back formation?
Backformation is creating a new, shorter word by mistakenly removing what looks like an affix. The human brain is constantly looking for patterns.
Oh, like the word editor?
Yes, people looked at the noun editor and assumed the or at the end was a suffix, like an actor or director, so they stripped it away to create the verb edit. But historically, editor was the original Latin word. The verb edit was backformed from it.
That is so funny. Our brains just made an assumption, stripped away the back half of the word, and society accepted it as a brand new verb.
We do it all the time.
Well, we also need to tackle a few major misconceptions students have when entering this ecosystem. First, the idea that word parts are just an English thing.
Oh, this is a huge advantage for multilingual test takers. The
Right.
vast majority of academic and medical roots are Greek or Latin borrowings, which means they are cognates across Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese.
Because true cognates share a root.
Exactly. That is a superpower if you speak a Romance language. You already know thousands of English medical roots without even realizing it.
Another big misconception is the idea that every syllable is a morpheme. Like students will look at the word banana and try to break it into ba plus na plus na.
Right, but those individual syllables don't carry separate meanings. Word part analysis only applies where the syllables actually correspond to a recognized affix or root. Banana is just one single free morpheme.
Good to know. I want to circle back to Nagy and Anderson, the reading researchers from the 1980s. Their broader research made a really interesting point, actually. They said the vast majority of a student's overall vocabulary growth actually comes from incidental learning.
Yeah, from wide reading, encountering words repeatedly in context, not from explicit root study.
Right. So if wide reading is still the main engine for learning words naturally, why are we prioritizing morphological awareness at all? Why drill these roots for these exams?
Well, explicit morphology instruction isn't meant to be a replacement for reading broadly. It is a critical fallback strategy. Outside the classroom, when you are not just taking a multiple choice test, this is a daily survival skill.
Because you don't always have context.
Exactly. When you are reading a novel, you can usually guess a word from the surrounding context. But in a clinical setting, context clues are scarce.
Like when a patient reads a pharmacy label.
Yes. Pharmacy labels, hospital charts, physician notes, they are incredibly dense with combining form medical vocabulary, and they lack narrative context entirely. A patient or a new nurse might encounter words like tachycardia, which is fast heart, or hypoglycemia, low blood sugar.
Or nephrotoxic, poisonous to the kidneys.
Right. Morphological awareness allows you to parse that complex information instantly, often under immense time pressure, without needing a medical dictionary.
And it extends to the news, too. When public health crises happen, the media regularly mints new morphologically transparent terms.
Right.
Like comorbidity, co plus morbid plus elity.
Yeah, and they enter the mainstream rapidly because their word parts make them instantly parsable to the public, even if they've literally never seen the word before. Legal, technical, and academic writing across every field relies on this same Greco-Latin root system.
So mastering this transfers far beyond nursing exams into any career that requires rapid comprehension of specialized text. It turns a wall of jargon into a series of logical instructions.
It really is a linguistic decoder ring.
It is. Well, we've covered so much ground today. We've talked about how to turn intimidating medical jargon into readable Lego bricks. We uncovered the magic of the top 4 prefixes, re, in, and dissing, that unlock half the vocabulary out there.
Which is still wild to me.
I know. We navigated the hilarious historical traps of blubbergers and copters and silent S's and islands, and explored how our brains literally rewrite language when we misunderstand it. And most importantly, we learned why this isn't just about passing a test, but building a vital emergency toolkit for the real world. So thank you so much for going on this deep dive with us today.
It's been great. And, this raises an important question to leave you with. Building on the phenomenon of rebracketing, where false historical divisions like Bellerberger and Copter become totally accepted productive word parts. What current grammatical mistakes are we making today that will secretly evolve into the strict, unbreakable vocabulary rules of the future?
Now that is a thought. Keep your decoder rings handy, everyone. You never know when the formulas are going to change.